Look, most indie devs start in the same exact playing field. No matter what their experience has been, they are all in the same boat, understaffed and under budget. Yet indie games have been delivering some of the most quality and full of life games we have seen in the last decade. The reason for why that is possible is something that could be explored more in another video, but today I want to talk about something else. I want to talk about what happens after an indie game becomes so successful. Is it truly still an indie game then, if it has like a larger and more interactive fan base than most AAA games? Or can we call it a AAA indie game? Now look, AAA indie games obviously aren't like a real thing. You know, there might be like Dave the Diver or whatever. You know, you might be able to call that a AAA indie game, I guess. They're not exactly a real thing, but they should be kind of considered a thing because we do have this new group of games that are experiencing something that no one else has experienced before, that no other indie devs are going through right now. They have released their game, and it has gone on to be very successful. You got people like Team Cherry with Silksong. You got people like Concerned Ape with Stardew. You got Extremely OK Games with Celeste. You got, Undertale. You got Hades. There's so many cool, the new Balatro game. There's so many of these games that are just popping up. And, it's still a small number, but we're getting more and more. But they're popping up and they are selling like crazy. Wow, they may have had really small budgets and really small teams. But if we think about like Team Cherry and Silksong, lately the fan base is growing more and more angry and losing patience and waiting for Silksong. And, Concerned Ape goes through the same thing too as well with Stardew updates that are free and not on console or phone yet, but they have hit PC and the console people are not happy, which is, kind of a funny point, but a lot of Team Cherry people will say, oh, look at Concerned Ape. He talks to his people. But then you look at Concerned Ape fans and Stardew fans, and they're not happy either. So we are in a new era of indie games that we've just never seen before. These games have gone on to be some of the greatest success stories in gaming. I know a lot of people try to downplay the actual size of these communities, and you guys are right in some sense, but the thing is, you guys are downplaying like the interaction that these indie games create within their fan bases. You're downplaying the replayability these games have implemented into making these games last years with very little added to them, some none at all. Very few AAA games can grasp that longevity in a game and loyal fan base. And the real point of all this is that these people did this with no budget, and sometimes as solo devs or in teams of 2 or 3 or 4. AAA teams of 1,000 people or 500 people dream of having this kind of impact on a community. Now you may be thinking, well, Hollow Knight was successful, so now they have unlimited budget and Team Cherry can hire as many people as they want, right? And sure, they do have a better budget to work with now. If you think about Hollow Knight being $15, and the last reported sales of it were 3 million in 2020. But also just to say, I've personally bought Hollow Knight on PS5, Xbox, Switch, and a hard copy on Switch since 2022. So I'm going to go ahead and just add 500,000 sales. I'm going to be really light. I feel like it's got to be more than 500,000 sales since 2020. But let's just add 500,000, right? 3.5 million copies. And if you consider the fact that it goes on sale a lot, probably means people don't buy it at full price a good portion of the time. Plus there's things like Game Pass and PS Plus, which they would have received money for being in that. But those might play into the downloads and the numbers and the actual sale counts. So let's count Hollow Knight at $7, 3.5 million sales. That's $24.5 million on a $38,000 budget. Now, for any of you guys that are in business or know about business, you'll know that that's crazy. You'll know that that's crazy, right? Like, that's insane. That is insane. On a business level, that is unheard of. But then you look at Stardew, right? Sold 30 million copies as of February this year. And you can do your own quick math on that one. But with all that being said, there is like a couple of handful of indie games that have gone on to do these type of numbers and sales. So Hollow Knight isn't alone. It's not the only one. But there still is a small number. So now, how do you categorize those? It's hard to keep them as an indie game because now they have these budgets. Now they have these fan bases. But real quick, let's look at a AAA game real quick. Far Cry 6. All right. Made by Ubisoft Toronto. Estimated at about like 520 people on their staff, around the world. The budget was estimated at about 80 to 130 million. I don't know where that actually sits. And it's estimated to have made about $119 million. So, wow, if that budget is in the middle there at 95, they've made $24 million. Wow. Same as Hollow Knight. Interesting. But, you got a lot more people and no impact. Far Cry 6 actually, I think, kind of killed that franchise a little bit. People were really disappointed in that one. Far Cry used to be a good fun little series, It used to be fun, but I think Far Cry 6 kind of, really, along with just the hate for Ubisoft and the blandness in it, really was the end. But I'm not here to talk about like the profit and stuff like that forever, but Hollow Knight is clearly 20 times better of a game, 20 times, way more profitable if you think about the budget. And now I'm just wondering how the hell I ended up comparing these two games. But if we think about Hollow Knight now having around $20 million to work with for Silksong, if you compare that to its original budget, you'd think, wow, they are golden. They got all they need. They are good. But the thing is, their budget can't exactly be that. They didn't just receive $20 million one night. It took some time and even years for the game to be out and have its like impact in sales. It sold roughly under 1 million in its first year. Once it went to Switch, it started selling a lot more. And then after 2 years, it was like almost at 3 million. But that's also like, a few years into, the development of Silksong. So since 2020, we haven't heard much. And if I had to guess, I'd say they sold a lot after 2020. Potentially even more than the first few years. Which is one thing indie devs should note right now is do not give up on your game at all. I know people try to say like, oh, like, yeah, this game just came and went, blah, blah, blah. Like, oh, who's talking about that game now? But it's like people were probably saying that about Hollow Knight like 6 months in, and look at us now. So, yeah, indie devs take note. All you got to do is add a free God Home DLC and your game will blow up. Even if it's years later, just put the God Home DLC in and you're good. But yeah, like I said earlier, if we think about it, Silksong was in development for some time before what you could consider like the real budget rolling in. And yeah, they had they sold 1 million copies. They were good, but who knows how much of that was on the Steam sale, Who knows how much they actually received from that? Who knows how much debt they went in making Hollow Knight to actually get out of. And now that they, are successful, they have overhead. They have an office. They have a lot more they have to pay for to continue development. Now, being successful and having all this money to work on your next game is no excuse for like what most people are upset with for the lack of communication. But I can't help but think about the amount of pressure that is added on them to now follow up Hollow Knight, the game that grew into the best Metroidvania ever. Now they are in the same position as these AAA games. AAA games do not have to deal with this. They do not have to deal with this. Yet, they have hundreds of people there to deal with it. They have social media teams to deal with this. So the art directors don't have to deal with this. So the coders don't have to deal with this, so they can work on making their game. That's why they hire these other people. Now, Team Cherry and Concern Date and Extremely OK Games and a handful of other teams are now in this weird position that we've just never seen before. They are people that realized that in order to create the quality games that people love and want to play for years and years, they have to keep their passion strong and control most aspects of their development by keeping their team small and passionate. Otherwise, what separates them from the AAA games that come and go? Those AAA teams hire a bunch of people and they don't fully realize their vision. They have tons of art people, tons of coders that don't fully understand like the gameplay mechanic that they were going for, that don't fully understand the exact art direction they wanted with that dungeon or whatever. So it ends up bland. And it's a bunch of people just barely doing their job. I don't mean to shit on AAA studios. I'm so sorry. AAA studios are definitely filled with tons of people that are passionate. But when you work in a larger team like that, when anybody who works jobs knows that there's going to be people that are there to just do their job. There's going to be a couple people that are passionate, and most other people there are just there to do the bare minimum and go home. And indie devs aren't like that. They don't get to just do their job and go home. Like, they have to live and breathe this stuff. Now, no one is ever mad at AAA teams who have 500 people and $150 million to work with for taking 5 to 7 years and not releasing monthly or yearly updates on the game. And in fact, I'm sure the updates and communications that most dev teams do have, indie or not, are for marketing purposes, right? They're not getting, grilled by everybody to put out stuff. They're putting it out there because they need the word of their game out there. They need the name out there. They need people to be interested in their game and wanting to buy it. What do you do when people are already super interested in your game and buy it? You're going to keep driving interest? No. That is a waste of time, resource, and money. And they don't have all the time, resources, and money. And they don't have the staff. They don't have the staff to just work their social media teams. And sure, they could. But what does that do for the game? What does that do for the game? In conclusion, I want to ask some questions. Why do we expect more from indie dev teams and indie games than we do from AAA games? Why can massive dev teams take just as long to create not great games that no one plays a few months after? But we get mad when we got to wait, the same time or a little longer for something that we know and love. And why on earth do we expect a team of 4 people who just want to create another quality game for us to enjoy to keep telling us they are making a game? We just want the game. And Ari and William clearly don't want to use social media, and that's perfectly fine. What does Team Cherry actually owe us? Everyone who backed the Kickstarter, I'm going to go out on a limb and say this, but I'm sure that they're more than content with the game that they backed, even without the Hornet stretch goal completed yet. If you are a Kickstarter backer and you think Team Cherry owes you the Hornet playable character right now, please let me know. I would love to talk to you on the Cherry Time podcast. If you haven't heard an episode of Cherry Time podcast, go listen to it. Got a few episodes with some Hollow Knight creators. Got a episode with the lead developer of Bow, another great game that you could play right now. And before I go, just know that some of these indie games are in a different position. They're not really the same as indie devs anymore. They have a little bit more dip on their chip per se, yet they know how to deliver. They know what they want to deliver, and they know what they need to do to make that happen. So let's just let it happen. That's all for me today. Hope you guys have a good one, and I'll see you when I see you. I don't know when I'm coming back, but